Well, President Trump is strongly condemning the New York City terror attack.
In a tweet, he said, "Looks like another attack by a very sick and deranged person. Law enforcement is following this closely. Not in the USA!" Exclamation point. That tweet came shortly after a man drove a truck into a crowded bike lane in Manhattan, killing at least 8 people. Well, joining us now for more on this, political commentator Bo Kelly. We also have California Republican National Committeeman Sean Steele and political analyst Peter Mathews. There have been a couple of tweets from the president in the last few hours in response to this. We heard from the president most recently tweeting out this: "I've just ordered Homeland Security to step up our already extreme vetting program." Okay, being politically correct is fine, but not for this. So, Peter, to you, that seems to be it. There is no confirmation from the White House, nothing from the Department of Homeland Security, no details of what is actually going to happen. So, from your point of view, what does that tweet actually mean?
Well, I think the way they define extreme vetting is to make sure that the person that's coming here is actually who they are, which could mean delaying allowing the entrance of the person or going into extreme amounts of background checks. But we don't have the details because the president doesn't come out and tell us. He tweets it in a 140 tweet, which is 140-word tweet, which is not much explanation at all, and that's not really good. We'll have to look into it later on and see what he means exactly and ask for specifics. That's a good point. I don't know what he's talking about.
Specifics would be good, but Sean, I guess the line in the tweet about political correctness, it did seem to stand out of place a little bit until I checked to see what they were saying over on Fox News. Listen to this.
This raises the obvious question, how did this guy get here? And it turns out he came under something called the diversity visa lottery that allows about 50,000 people to come into this country every year. They're given green cards. They have no connection to the United States and no skills, specific skills. Given that program, how can we vet for people like this?
And he came under a program called the Diversity Visa Program. I started digging into this. You know what that is, Sean? It's a lottery program. It's been in existence for some time. 50,000 people a year come in here through the Diversity Visa Program. Because the Diversity Visa Program was set up, you see, to make sure that underrepresented countries can send their people into this country, too.
And it went on like that for hours earlier and hours after. But Mo, actually, I want to ask you this. Is it possible that the motivation for the president's tweet could have been what he was seeing on Fox News? Because they were talking about it before that, and a lot before that tweet came out.
Well, we've seen it time and time again where something would happen on a particular Fox program when he is more likely to be watching like very early in the morning or late in the evening, and then he will parrot exactly what was said.
And it's aimed at his supporters as opposed to...
Oh, absolutely. Why would the president talk about political correctness as opposed to an actual policy or legislation that he wants to push through? And on the heels of having his most recent travel ban troubles, it just says that he's trying to make political hay by that tweet as opposed to a policy change.
So, Sean, just to be clear, the president, as Mo would put it, is playing politics as opposed to really looking for political
I don't think so. I think that Trump's probably watching us right now. So he monitors all the stations. So I wouldn't worry about that. Secondly, I think the discussion about the diversity lottery is something that none of us do. I didn't know about it. Anybody at this table ever hear of it?
I did, yes.
Oh, well, congratulations. Now that explains a lot that I didn't understand. The point is, there needs to be a rational system. There's some 4 million people throughout the world waiting to come to the United States. Frankly speaking, half the world would come to the United States if they could. I don't think anybody doubts that. But there's 4 million that have to jump through the hoops. Most of them are Asians. They can't get through because we have such a glut and such confusion with our current policy that hopefully is going to get streamlined. Hopefully the Congress is going to do something. All Trump wants to do is prevent terrorists from coming. I don't think anybody should object to that, but there are people actually objecting to that.
No, we don't object to that.
Yes,
it's not what you do, it's how you do. It's not how you go about it is important, and it's not just about what someone looks like or what country from which they originate. There are people who are being radicalized.
The country's important, not what they look like. I agree with you, but
people are radicalized after they get here too.
That's right, and we should be paying attention to that. We should be getting help from people that are watching people that are getting radicalized as well. There should be a much more of a consensus and working together.
But if you go around blanketing and using wholesale language about communities and countries, then how are you going to get that cooperation?
Here's the problem. We are already blanketing. Everybody has to take their shoes off, you know, when they go to the airport. Everybody could be an equally determined person to be profiled. That's not the smart way to do it. Nobody takes a serious situation and try to examine every single cell in the body for a cancer. You look at the specific cells that are really a problem. You look at the profile indicators. You make an intelligent, rational choice. Israelis have done this. We can do the same thing.
Peter, what has happened over the last couple of years is that the intelligence community, the law enforcement community in the U.S. has depended heavily on the Muslim community within the United States for intelligence and information on these homegrown plots, on issues of homegrown radicals, which is why a lot of people say that the situation in the U.S. with the radicalization is nowhere near as bad as it is in places of Europe like France and Belgium, where it is a huge problem because they haven't had the same approach, because these communities have been ostracized.
That's true. Those communities are very isolated, and they haven't been, the people in that community haven't been given the opportunity, the young people especially, to go ahead and take part in the fruits of that society, like in Britain, for example, in the ghettos of France and parts of Paris. That's the problem. At least we have more integration here with people of different backgrounds. I want to get back to what Sean just said about, you know, looking at people in a certain profiling manner. I think he was implying that to see if that's the group that you target the most because they happen to be the group from which some of the members came. I think you can miss the real terrorists if you do that. You can certainly miss some of the white supremacist terrorists who attack us, and we don't go after them more strictly because they look like a lot of other people here. So you have to look at people not based on just ethnicity or appearance. You've got to use more sophisticated methods by having intelligence, by having people who can speak the language in other countries and can tell us who the enemies are possibly. But you can't give up our civil liberties entirely like we've been doing to a certain extent just to keep a certain sense of false security, especially by just targeting people with a broad brushstroke. You've got to have more individual efforts. And I do give commendation to the United States for not ghettoizing most of our people from the different parts of the world. We let them integrate more.
And I think it's a good point. And so, Sean, I'm just going back to you because I saw when Peter said about, you know, white supremacists, you kind of went, what does that mean? That isn't something that's worthy?
Nobody likes white supremacists, but, you know, they're
domestic terrorism.
We might have a president who does.
Oh, that's silly, and that's outrageous. And Mo, as a decent human being, as a decent human being, General Kelly, you're off the rails, and you should be embarrassed.
He just made the case for General Lee today.
Well, you know what? General Lee's not my kind of a general. My family was unionist.
Let's focus on the
But that's shameful, and it's off the rails. And by the way, the vast majority of Americans disagree with you on this. Remember, this is an international situation, Mo, so you're speaking from a very small leftist point of view. You don't need to do that. But you had another question.
I guess my question was, you know, as we talk about foreign terrorism versus domestic terrorism, to go back to Peter's point, you know, how we handle it. And, you know, he did kind of bring in the fact that if you ghettoize or target one group, you may miss
Nobody's
others.
Ghettoizing. The problem is Peter has no methodology whatsoever to identify terrorists. Let's have a look. Who are the terrorists that are our biggest problem? That happens to be jihadists. Well, they're probably not Christians coming from Central Africa. They're probably not Roman Catholics coming from Switzerland.
Exactly.
So you got to be rational about this. They're probably not females. They're probably males.
Was Las Vegas terrorism?
You know, and that was
That's a yes or no.
And you know what? And Chicago terrorism? What kind of Chicago terrorism is that?
Las Vegas an act of terrorism?
Of course it was. And any type of violence is an act of terrorism that hurts a lot of people.
Because we don't know the motivation.
But you're making a moral equivalency here, and what you mean, what this really means is that you don't even appreciate the nature of jihadist international terrorism, and you're apologizing for it, in effect.
Sean, excuse me, this is a question of practicality. If you focus on one group, you're going to miss the terrorists in other groups, other ethnic groups. So instead, you have to have a more individualized approach. You can have intelligence, but you also can't give up civil liberties. That's
I don't think we're having a lot of white supremacists coming to America as immigrants. We're talking about an immigration problem.
Some of them already here.
We're not talking about domestic terrorism. We're talking about an immigration.
Well, wait a minute.
You don't want to have any barriers. You don't want to have any controls. You don't want to have any vetting whatsoever. And that's irrational.
But the jihadists can choose. Hold on 1 minute.
We just had it in New York City.
the jihadists can choose a European-looking person who's converted and has the same name as the European name. They can do that, and they've done that before.
And you know what? That certainly is a program, but that's not. Look at the people that have been doing the act of terrorism in the name of Islam, and none of them are white Europeans. I guarantee you that. It might happen in the future, but you're missing the vote.
I think
and you're making excuses.
Yeah, I think that might be a bit of a stretch if you went to parts of the Caucasus.
I think we're out of time.
No.
But very quickly, before we go, there's been a lot of expressions of sympathy from world leaders, among them the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. He tweeted this out. London stands in grief and solidarity with the great city of New York tonight. He then added in a statement, New Yorkers are strong and resilient. I know they will not be cowed by this assault on the innocent and on our shared values and way of life, which is quite the contrast to how the president reacted to a terror attack in London.
Yeah, indeed. And as we wrap this up, and to your point, I think that's the point, Sean. It's about America holding on to its values.
Yeah.
It's about America holding on to its values as it looks to secure itself and doesn't go around making assumptions.
And at the same time, holding on to our lives too.
Okay.
We're not playing suicide any
But the
longer.
country has stayed pretty safe. I mean, considering in the grand scheme of things.
Values and safety.
Sean gets last word. Okay, great. Mo and Sean and Peter, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Very
Always
much appreciated.
appreciate the spirited conversation. Thank you, gentlemen.